Hi there, it is Bobby Joe, and today on our podcast we have a special guest who is from a title department, Tycor Title, and we wanted to touch some questions about maybe what is title. Like if someone's never bought a house before, maybe they might be wondering what is title and why would I want to pay for that. So can you help us out with that question?
Absolutely. So my name is Kristine with.
Oh, sorry, I didn't introduce you.
Yeah, like maybe.
Sorry. We'll start with that. This is Kristine Borden with
Yeah.
Tycor Title. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So I've been with Tycor Title for about 7 years. And prior to that, I was in the mortgage industry for a long time. But the biggest reason that people need title and escrow is just to protect both the buyer and the lenders during any real estate transaction.
So what are you protecting them against?
Well, if you're doing the title, you're kind of protecting them against any title defects that might show up on title. So, and that could be various things that show up on title, whether it's like a lien, a judgment, maybe there's a conflict with like a will, maybe there's, relatives that would want to come in and say, no, this is my property, and they want to contest, the title. That is what the title insurance is for.
Wonderful. So also, in my career lately, I've been running into a lot of easement issues. So title is where I go. I first call my title department and ask them, can you help me dig into this? Is there really an easement that gives access to this waterfront, park area, in this community? Or is there really an easement to access this property that maybe the road has not been developed to yet? And so I really lean on the title department to do that research for me too.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. If you have a property, one of the title defects that can show up is that you could have like easement issues with your neighbor. So let's say you purchase a property and you buy it and you think that the parcel is all yours, but your neighbor is saying it's their parcel or the road access is theirs. That's where it's really important to have title insurance. You have a title officer to protect you, to look at that and kind of figure out, okay, who actually does have rights to any easement or water rights, who has those rights, so you don't end up in court suing each other over it. And if it's something that the other thing, the big thing with title and escrow is that like you're protected if there is a claim, like with Tycor Title, we're a Fortune 500 company. We're part of Fidelity. So we're really big pockets. So you're going to be protected that if there is a claim, if there is a title defect, that it will get, the customer or the lender is going to be safe and protected if there was a loss on it, or if there was fraud on the transaction. They're going to be covered if that were to happen.
And recently, the fraud word, it has become, like, my whole entire career, I've never had it be such an issue until like since COVID, honestly. Mm-hmm. I feel like all of a sudden there's like all these new wormholes for predators. Like I've had people call me several times wanting me to go there. We live out of state. We want you to go view a property that we would like. Is this vacant land? We want you to sell it for us. And my first question is, sure, no problem. But because you're not here locally for me to know you, can you please send me your driver's license just so I can establish who you are? And then they never send me their driver's license. So it's like, I think that's a pretty simple request when you're asking to work with someone out of state, right?
No, Bobby, that's exactly accurate. Unfortunately, there is a lot of fraud going on right now. And what you just described is in the event that you owned a property and maybe it's vacant and you live in a different state, there could be predators out there or fraudsters that are trying to manipulate kind of the system and make it look like they're the owner of a property when they're in fact not.
Yeah.
And they try to, maybe go in and, look like they're selling the property. They get a real estate agent. And that's where title and escrow, that's our responsibility to make sure that that the buyer is protected. We've actually ran into this, fraud issues are how many times people try to fraud, real estate is actually really high, and we catch it a lot of times because we have systems in play. But just what you described there, yes, that could happen if in the event that seller owned the property, they were out of state, and then you had a fraudster come in and try to sell it. If they actually in fact sold that property, to somebody else, another buyer, that's where you'd have that title insurance, and that seller could make a claim, and that title insurance company would have to make that transaction whole because they missed the fact that it wasn't rightfully the true seller that sold the property.
Right. Well,
yeah.
In my career, we'd never ever had to make a claim. And it's just because I feel like the title departments we work with, including you guys, are so clear on taking care of these things before the contract is over, right? So, we have dealt with easement issues. We have dealt with, like, we think there's only one lien on a property for a mortgage, and all of a sudden we find out that maybe there's 2 or 3 that they had gotten extra liens somewhere else, and or they did a roof repair, and then all of a sudden there's a contractor lien on the property, and then sort of like, oh, I forgot about that. I forgot I did a roof, 12 years ago, but I feel like it happens a lot more that you guys are catching them through the process, and then we're just trying to do addendums through the process to make sure they're paid up and completely at closing.
Yeah, and there could be a lot of things, like let's say you had a buyer come in and buy a property, the title company, even let's say if it was Fidelity, we're Fortune 500, let's say everything goes through, we think everything's paid off on the property, but maybe there's something that shows up later that there is a lien. It is protecting that future buyer and that lender, that if we miss something on our end, that claim that they're putting in is going to pay for it, because it's our job to catch, to make sure that there is, everything is paid off of that, title is cleared, the transfer title is taken over from buyer to seller, everything is reconveyed. So if, when they say reconveyed, if you, refinance even in your property, you got to make sure that that is reconveyed off of your title, so it doesn't look like you have 2 mortgages on there. So there could be a lot of issues of a lot of things that you'd be surprised at how many claims actually are made. Yeah, it's probably more than you'd probably realize. And unfortunately, there's a lot of attempts on the fraud, more than you'd realize too.
Well, my eyes were wide open since COVID. Now I'm a little more skeptical, but I think you just always have to do your due diligence, though, like when you're working with any new buyers, right? So if they're coming to you from out of state or out of country, to me, that's always an initial red flag. And so let's just validate who you really are. And I'd be more than glad to help you, but let's just make sure you are who you are saying you are. And
it's also, it's important to have escrow involved too, because so for the viewers that are watching this now, maybe you don't know what the difference between escrow and title. So escrow, which Tiger Title has escrow and title. The difference is, the title is your insurance policy to protect you for any title defects, whether it's liens, judgments, fraud, etc. The escrow teams at Ticor make sure that everything is facilitated. They kind of make sure that they follow instructions from the lender, the buyer, the real estate agents, make sure everybody gets paid. And then they make sure that the title is transferred over correctly and everything on that transaction's paid out.
For sure.
Exactly right.
And some examples of clouds, like people have heard of clouds on title. And sometimes a cloud could be as simple as maybe someone got divorced or someone passed away, but that person's name is still showing on the title report. And so it would just be the seller would need to prove an event happened, and then you guys would clear it up before it moves on to the next buyer.
Yes. Yeah. So there is we do have title officers that make sure that if there is like a cloud on title, it's the escrow officers that they do the third party, make sure they close the transaction. But really, the title officers are really there. If you ever ask for a title officer, they're the ones that are insuring your title insurance and make sure everything is correct.
Well, I have just recently, actually today, I was talking to my title officer rep person because I have a piece of vacant land that a client is wanting to sell. And I've been out there, and for the life of me, I cannot find the property, and it's funny too, because the title map differs from the county map or the tax assessor's page. So I just keep leaning on my title rep and just be like, hey, can you please, it's like, can you dial this down? Like, I do not understand how to read the legal description. But I'm like, certainly there must be a way to navigate me in through the legal description. The legal description, is like the south right corner of section 24, basically like 15 steps right. Like I don't understand it. I'm like, please help me. But anyhow, we spent a good amount of time today going back and forth. And I think I'm ready to go back out and do a new scavenger hunt and find it. I'm telling my client, I can't sell it for you until I can find it.
Yeah.
I need to find it first just to learn what we're marketing here too. But I think that the easement road or the road just hasn't been developed all the way to her property. So I think that when we go there tomorrow, we're going to just do a little bit of hiking. Yeah, but we're going to find it. But I think I'm thankful though that we have the title to lean on to help us, as a real estate agent on that aspect. Yeah,
that's absolutely correct. Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to it, and it's important just to make sure that you're protected. In fact, I had a real estate agent ask me today, do they really need title insurance? Do they need it? Definitely get title insurance, because it's a one-time fee that you pay. If you bought a house and you lived in it for the rest of your life, that fee you'd only pay once for the rest of your life. Obviously, if you sell it and buy another house, you're going to pay a fee for that too, but it's a one-time fee that protects you for the life of that entire loan, against fraudsters, against anybody that would come back. Maybe the prior seller sold the property and maybe that seller had a relative that's like, no, I had rights to that property, that's my property. So there's a lot of things that behind the scenes that you might not realize, that the title insurance is there to protect you. And then if you ever did need it, you just put in like a claim like any other insurance company. You apply your claim and then they kind of research it, just like if you had car insurance.
That's not so bad.
Yeah.
So I always think of it too, that if you're the seller, you'd want to have it because you want to ensure that you're handing off a clean title and you're not going to have to worry about going back to court later because something came up on it. And then on the buyer's perspective, you'd want to pay for it because you want to ensure that you're receiving a good title and that everything has been done correctly. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or what if somebody put up false something, judgment or lien on your property that wasn't in fact yours, and you want to make sure that that's cleared out and corrected.
For sure.
Yeah.
And the big scheme of thing too, when you're dealing with purchasing or selling real estate, like your guys' fees are not that big in the big scheme of things. Like, because you break it down and there's a fee structure that goes for the purchase price, correct?
Yeah. So when you buy title insurance, it's based off of the sales price and where the property is located. But generally it's a sales price, and we have, generally speaking, most title and escrow companies all have the same amount of title and escrow fees. Are all very, very comparable. The one thing I would recommend if you are, a buyer out there looking for a title and escrow company, make sure it's one with big pockets. We're under the Fidelity umbrella. We're actually the largest insurer in the United States. And the reason why that is really important to you is because if you were working with a small title company, they wanted to get in the game and they wanted to do title and it didn't work out, you don't want to be with a company that doesn't have big pockets or big funds to pay out that claim if you needed to. So, Fidelity is a huge Fortune 500. We're not going anywhere. We have the money to pay those claims, to get you right if you put a claim in. And believe me, you don't want to be dealing with a situation where you're dealing with a smaller company, even if it was an escrow or title company. And this actually happened to me when before I went into title, I was in mortgage, but I did refinance. And I went to go get a second line of credit because my daughter was going into college to get, an equity line. And I thought it was going to be a really fast transaction, really easy. I'm in the business. And it ended up being like a month and a half for me to close my second equity line. Because when I refinanced, that escrow company did not reconvey my existing mortgage. So it not only did it look like I had one mortgage, but it looked like I had two mortgages on the same house, which one was already paid for. So I had to work with, going back. I was in the business. It took me a lot of due diligence to make sure that got cleared off of there, because the title and escrow company, I'm not going to name names, felt that it was the borrower's responsibility, and I'm not joking on this, to clear that reconveyance. And so it was almost perfect timing for me when I switched into title to realize, okay, this is why, you could either go to Nordstrom of title and escrow, or you could go to the self-service checkout counter. And if you run into a situation like that at Tycor, we're going to be there to walk you
through the process.
Through the process,
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say that for myself as a real estate agent, typically agents will choose the escrow office or the title office on the listing side. And as a buyer, you can choose where you go for your escrow portion, but most people want you to keep it in the same house because it keeps it simple. And so there is a particular title company out there I do not like to work with. And in a transaction, they were really adamant that they used that company. And my response to the other agent was like, that's fine. So if you have a really good relationship with this person, that's fine. But as long as you can guarantee me that we're going to have good communication, because in the past I've had poor communication with them. And so I'm going to hold you accountable for it. And so if they're not calling me back, I'm going to be reaching out to you, to make sure you can contact them. And he was like, oh yeah, no problem, Bobby Joe. Well, then 2 weeks into the transaction, he called me back. He's like, yeah, we're going to go ahead and move title. Is there a place that you'd like to move it to? Because he was having the same problem that I had. So, and then hopefully I converted him. Hopefully they'll not use that company anymore. I feel like when you're representing a contract, you need to be having good communication with everybody. And I think that really is something that sets other companies aside like yourselves, is that you do have great communication through the whole process. So
that's good to hear.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that. But there are some people, not naming names, but that are on my blacklist. So I definitely have a company that I would recommend you not to use. But there are lots of great companies in our area, and I would agree that yes, we should always go through it. My whole thing that I like to explain to clients, well, first off, for the escrow and title is part of your closing costs. So it's not a fee that you're paying up front in addition to, it's not like your inspection or the earnest money where you have to pay it before you close. So that might be a common question people may ask. But so it is part of your closing costs. Your lender will put that into the formula for your closing cost. But when you're buying such a big purchase, you want to have all the tools that are going to protect you long term. And it's definitely an important tool for me. There are some states that require you to close through a lawyer. We're not one of those states, but I feel like it should always be through a lawyer or through an escrow company. I would never recommend someone going through it not having title insurance.
No, you do. Honestly, nobody wants to pay a title. Nobody wants to pay for any insurance fee. Nobody wants to pay for that. I get it. But you definitely want it to protect yourself in the long run, because you could be paying a lot more or risking the biggest investment your biggest investment you ever have in life is probably a home, right? It's your home. So you definitely don't want that to be at risk.
No, not definitely don't. And with the escrow part, their job, you have the title first. Title is making sure that there's no judgments or liens. And they're looking into things like the easements. Also, they'll look into the HOA dues for us, which is great, or get any information that pertains to the property that is besides the actual structure of just the home. They'll get us that information. But when we get to the escrow section, then I always tell my clients, it's their job to make sure that all the checks and balances have been done. And they're the ones who are sending over the money to or taking the wire from the bank, releasing funds to the new lender, and then releasing the contract to escrow or to the county to record it. But there's 10 steps that have to happen between the time that you sign the contract and you actually get the keys. And so that's the part where I always tell my clients, just breathe. We've all done our jobs now. Now it's, now the work is in our escrow department. And that's where I feel as a real estate agent, it's really important to be working with companies that you have faith in. They'll do a good job. Sometimes, they might sit on not send the file, say the funds have been released, and they don't send the file in a timely manner over to the county. Well, the county has a cutoff time. So if they don't get the documents, I think it's 1:30, then they don't record until the next day. And if you have a client who's, counting on closing on that day and, they have a moving truck, they're ready to go, and all of a sudden you're halt because it hasn't recorded and it's technically not your house yet, and it has a lot of ruffles. So for myself, I feel like you burn me once, shame on you, burn me twice, shame on me. And I say that because it's once that happens, I'm okay, we're not going to put ourselves in that position again. And so I've never been in that position with you guys, so I appreciate that. I appreciate that, but everything always just moves the way that it needs to, and it's where it comes in handy, though, having good relationships with your with any vendor you work with.
And the one thing I want to add too is for anybody viewing this right now. we're in a higher interest rate environment. A lot of the houses that are selling right now are, maybe, people have passed away. They need to sell their house. If you have any kind of probate issues or, you need help clarifying that whole process, does somebody have a will? Has it gone through probate? Do we need a lack of probate, which it's a whole class on itself, the whole probate process. But, that's what we're there to help you for. And the real estate agents through the process of, okay, how do we get somebody through, probate, and if somebody did pass away, and we even have attorneys reaching out to title and escrow for our title officers to figure out, okay, if maybe you had somebody that had several houses years ago and maybe they lost, a deed wasn't recorded or something like that. That's where we have plants where it goes, not plants like living plants, but we have like warehouse plants of everything dealing with that house that goes way back. So and that's where we get the title officer involved too, to make sure, okay, do we have the deed on that? Was something recorded to, make sure everybody's protected. But if you do have any probate issues, the cool thing that you could do with, especially with Ticor, is that if you do go mutual, if Bobby Joe goes mutual on a property, and we don't have to wait for, maybe she right when she opens up her title, we could start clearing title right away. So if there is a probate issue, or if there's something complicated on title that we want to clear up prior to going mutual, we could get that done so that you close on time.
Awesome.
And that's one thing that probably sets us aside from even some of our other sister companies under Fidelity.
Awesome. And that is huge too. Like I'm a big advocate for opening preliminary title before I take on a listing. And it's just to make sure that there's nothing to take care of before we actually go live. And I think that's important, because the more information you have about a property, the smoother you can make the closing for both parties, the buyers and the sellers. Yes. So anyhow, if you guys have any other questions about title or escrow, please feel free to reach out to us, and or you can put comments into the feed. We would be glad to answer those for you. And if you have specific questions, again, about probate or whatnot, you can reach out to Ticor Title. They'd be glad to answer those questions for you or get you in the right direction.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to the next episode.